to our audience, Melissa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Melissa is a master certified coach in human needs psychology and the visionary behind the Science Collapse, a powerful message exposing the hidden burnout of high functioning humans. Her work is shaped by a childhood of addiction and a betrayal, which she transformed into a mission to help others reclaim their power and peace. Certified by Tony Robbins and trusted by global leaders, she combines emotional depth with practical tools for transformation. Melissa guides women to shed outdated roles, reconnect with their truth, and rise empowered. Her presence on stage is raw, authentic, and deeply inspiring. As they present truly inspiring bio Melissa, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you. It is wonderful to be here. I'm very, very excited to come to all of you and be able to share some of the things that have come up in my life that have benefited hundreds of thousands of my clients. And so today I thought what we would talk about is something that I know there'll be other conversations today around what's happening within society. And because I spend so much time in the coaching seat, I become really aware of something that's taking place, and I thought I would address it today and bring my biggest tool for the problem to all of you. So we want to talk today about what we refer to as the silent collapse. One of the things we note in today's day and age is that people are silently collapsing inside. While they're performing great on the outside, we know from coaching and therapeutic practices that people are struggling. And part of why is because we're an achiever society. Part of what the American dream is about achieving. It's achieving your goals. It's achieving what people couldn't find in other countries. They come here because the opportunity exists. While that is great, sometimes we go over the top with managing the opportunities and we forget to get into balance. So for a lot of us, out of survival or just life circumstances, we are constantly high achieving. We're high functioning, high performing, but while we're doing all of that, underneath, we're exhausted. Most people I talk to today are either empty, wondering if this is all there is. Is it just going to be a grind for the rest of my life? And so there's a lot of hopelessness starting to really materialize and stay in the space. And so if we don't see it in other people, we miss it and we smile and we walk by and they suffer in silence. And so I believe many of you, even here today, may have some of that going on in your own life. You may be burned out. You may be tired. You might be frustrated and you might be hopeless. And so I hope to bring something to you today that could help with that. It's a powerful tool that I have used over thousands of coaching sessions, and I'm excited to bring it to you. There's a cost to high society. I think they're bringing up my slides, so hopefully that's coming up pretty soon. I hope you guys can still hear me. Well, I'm hoping you guys can hear me. I'm just going to keep going until they tell me to stop. But what we're dealing with right now are nervous systems. People have lost their joy. They've lost the ability to rest and relax, and they're really fighting to find their true identity. And something that Tony Robbins said is that the human condition will do anything to protect their existing identity, even if it's wrong, even if it's unhealthy. And so through the process of coaching and through the growth paths that I take my clients on, one of the things we address is that underlying collapsing internal energy where they are in conflict about being a performer and succeeding while wanting to die in a pile, and they're just completely exhausted. Let's see, can you guys move to the next slide for me by chance? I'm not sure if you can do that. Maybe I can do that. Let's see, guys, there we go. So why should you listen to me? I always ask that question, especially when I'm listening to other speakers. And here's just a little bit of why I feel like I'm an expert in this space. I was raised by alcoholic parents in a very dysfunctional family. If you've ever seen Captain Fantastic, that was very much my life. And as a result, I was born into survival energetically and emotionally because my parents weren't parents. I love them dearly, but they shouldn't have had children. So as a result, I grew up very, very quickly. And I got into the survival mode, and I learned to grind to keep safe and to also help raise my little brothers. That journey led me through a lot of different life circumstance, a lot of difficulty, and a lot of hard situations that forced me to figure out my life, because at one point I wanted to end it. I started in coaching back about 30 years ago, and I got into coaching because I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. This was immediately on the heels of my parents dying in 2 separate deaths and going through my second divorce. It was an ugly period in my life. And to get diagnosed with a disease that was incurable, that I was told should just go to bed and wait to die, I got suicidal. Be very frank, I was literally looking for ways to end my life. And my oldest son, who's in this picture next to Tony, at the time was working in coaching sales, and he paid me to go to an event. I didn't want to go. I was literally, he knew instinctively that I was going to end my life. And so he had my brother, who's on the right side of Tony, pick me up and take me to this coaching event. It was not a Robbins event, it was a different coaching company. But that year, the theme of the event was based on Tim McGraw's song, How to Live Like You Were Dying. And as I sat through that event and I looked through the history of my life, I was a very angry woman. I felt robbed of joy. I felt robbed of a normal life. And I felt robbed of being able to get beyond all the circumstances that I had been heaped on top of me. MS was the final straw. And in that event, one of the things, the most beautiful and most powerful things of my life was that I learned that all of the crap in my life had value. And it didn't just have some value, it had massive value. And that what I had seen as ugly and evil, the universe showed me it was for good. And I became a coach as a result of that opportunity in that space. And I was on stage with that company in the next year, and I coached for them for 8 years. And then I moved on to my bucket list, which was Tony Robbins. My son had been a follower, both my son and my brother had been followers of Tony and had brought me into the space. And ironically, I got to go through the gauntlet and get hired and coach for Tony for 12 to 15 years. I coached his top tier clients. I coached everyone all over the planet, every nationality, language, economic bracket, and circumstances. And it was an incredible ride. And through all of that, I learned some skills, but I also learned patterns. And what we're going to be talking about today are the patterns that we get into because of life, because of how we were raised or we weren't raised. And as a result of that, we develop behaviors and emotional states that either help us win or it keeps us paralyzed. If you guys could take the next slide, I'd appreciate it. I don't know, can I do it? Nope, I have to wait for them to do it. There we go. So part of what takes place in what I call the silent collapse is that there's some myths that we grow up with. Now, some of those were societal, some of those were our family of origin, some of them are based on religious beliefs, but a lot of these things that we embrace are because of what we learned growing up or learned in business or learned through pain. One of them is the myth of performance. And most of us learn that if we don't perform, we don't survive. That's also part of the American dream. When people come here, they know if they perform, there's an opportunity to win. But as a result, we've become overachievers. When we industrialized as a nation, we stopped doing a lot of the healthy things that we had before that, and we jumped into this compulsive need to win. And it cost us something. So what happened when women joined the workforce, not only did they join the workforce, but they were doing double duty. They were performing at work and then they were performing at home. And so there was a lot going on where women, and even today, are currently dying inside, falling apart, losing their hair, overweight or underweight. They can't sleep. They have all kinds of issues, and a lot of them are based on the imbalance in the performance of their life. The second myth is self-sacrifice. Depending upon how you were raised or what religious beliefs you came through, a lot of women were taught that they go until they burn out. They don't get an off switch. They became depleted because they were over delivering in every aspect of their life. And I'm not separating men out of this today because men also are struggling right now at the highest level we've ever seen in society. But for the general audience, I'm going to speak mostly to the women. We get stuck in certain identities and pigeonholed in them because of marriage, because of parenting, or being raised a certain way. And so we learn that we need to sacrifice our health, our identity, our self-worth on the altar of delivering for everybody else. And then we also have the myth of being stuck. Today, there's a silent epidemic in our society that the emotions we experience are not by choice. They just are. And as a result, like I learned, my anger and rage at circumstances in life, I really believed there was nothing I could do about it. Secondarily, I believed I was entitled to it because life had sucked, because people had betrayed me. I've been married 3 times, sadly. My first marriage did not end well after 10 years. He was a very caustic and toxic man. I then got remarried. That husband cheated on me for 10 years very publicly. It was traumatizing. And then my last marriage of 25 years, I found out my husband had been cheating on me for 20 years and had contracted HIV. So you can imagine my anger was epic. And the thing that was so fascinating is that I really believed it was mine. And it was mine, and it was mine, and I was my job to make sure I was angry because I was justified. Bad things had happened. And I believe one of the myths that we have in raising our children is that we teach them that they are entitled to being raged and angry and depressed and violent because we as adults have not learned to regulate our emotional states, and we've passed it on to our kids. It's why suicide rates are off the charts for our children. It's why right now 83% of most children have had one or more anti-anxiety drug and antidepressant drug. We had 85,000 children under the age of 1 years old in 2023 and 2024 who were medicated on antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs. So our children are not learning how to manage their energy or their emotions, and we're teaching them that they're entitled to all the wrong ones, and that's all they get. So if you're in a state of collapse, of depression, anxiety, hopelessness, then please know you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. And what I want to bring to you today, I'm hoping to help you move through that. Your exhaustion needs to stop being your overwhelming emotion. It is your compass if you're only using one tool. If all you have is hopelessness and exhaustion, you're never going to achieve access to your highest self. You're missing the best part of you. Please move to the next slide. Some of the data supports what I'm talking about here, and if I wanted to dive deeper, there's a lot of data. But right now, statistically, women are 2 times more likely to burn out than men. Part of that's because we do double duty. It's not enough just to go to work and come home and sit in the recliner and watch sports for us. We get to keep the house clean, raise children, take care of pets, laundry, dishes, and everything else that goes along with that. And so we are 2 times more likely to burn out and collapse than men are. Our female leaders are burning out at a very rapid rate. 43% of women in business who are executives or leaders are crashing, and they're crashing hard. We have chronic stress conditions right now that have exceeded anything we've ever seen in society. Women are now in chronic stress situations. 68% of women on the planet are in chronic stress situations. I believe this number is inaccurate because of my personal experience, but this data says that 16% of women battle anxiety or depression. I would challenge that and guess it's closer to 50%. Annual cost of burnout to businesses right now, $300 billion. And that number is going to probably double this year because of our burnout conditions and our lack of ability to manage our energy. And then part of why this is so challenging is that 40% of women now own businesses in the US. So we are now not only running families, giving birth, raising children, taking care of everything else, but we're also running businesses. And so you can see that the compounding effect, a lot of this is causing women to crash and burn. And so if we don't address it, if we don't speak to it, and we don't make it public knowledge, then it's going to continue and it's going to worsen. Because like it or not, our children are learning from us. And so we want to make sure we enhance and heal our experience so our children don't get there. And the reason I say that is they may not be as good as us in managing depression and anxiety. And if we don't figure this out, the suicide rate will triple. Please go to the next slide. So as I was working in this conversation, around how do I change it? I knew I was angry. I knew I was depressed. I knew I hated my life. And I knew at that time, I did not know there was any way out other than to grind and just stay in movement. Well, as a result of different coaching programs and a lot of the work I do, I discovered this process, and a lot of you have heard of it. It's called Pareto's Law. Now, most of us have only heard Pareto's Law referred to in a sales context, that 20% of the people do 80% of the business. And that is accurate. I think that universal law has been proven, but there's a much deeper message from Pareto, and most of us have missed it. Where I learned this was watching high-level people when I was working for Tony. I had the pleasure of coaching his top-tier clients, his platinum partners. And what I was witness to was that all these highly successful people like Tony, like Oprah, like Ellen, all these people had figured something out that the vast majority of the population didn't get. And I wanted to know what it was, because if they could win, why couldn't I? And so I started researching. And one of the things I came up with was that we have been all taught from birth, just like our parents were and their parents before them, we've been taught how to do things. And so over the course of our lives, like we've taught our children and they're going to teach their children, our lives have been 90% focused on how to do life, how to crawl, walk, ride a bike, go to school. Then our teachers teach us how to do the subjects. If we graduate and we go on to college, we learn how to do those subjects. If we go into business or we get a job, we learn how to do the job. So over time, what we've done is we've overdeveloped the how muscle. And so when we look at the formula for success and we want to leverage Pareto's Law, one of the biggest pieces we need to recognize is that we have the ratio backwards. Most of us are 80% to 100% in how to do life, how to do the mechanics of life. And what these successful people figured out is they did it backwards. They flipped it. Rather than living an 80 to 100% on how to make money, they cracked the code. And they recognized that when they were out of the formula for success and they were 80% to 100% in how to build something, do something, there were symptoms that showed up. And these symptoms are our flags for ourselves and also for our children. And if you have people under your employ, when you recognize these flags, you're going to be able to help them shift very quickly with a very simple process. When we are more than 20% in the mechanics of life, one of the things that happens in our symptoms that show up are very clear. So you may want to write these down. When I'm out of the formula for success and I'm in a state of anger, depression, frustration, whatever that looks like, these symptoms show up and they look a lot like procrastination, self-doubt, self-sabotage, anxiety. Like I said, 80,000 children under the age of 1 were put on anti-anxiety medications. There's a problem. Then we have overwhelm. It's a new buzzword. Everybody we talk to is in a state of overwhelm. And believe it or not, they are. Stress. Stress is the achiever's word for fear. And everybody we know is in some degree of stress. And ultimately, we go into depression. We go into a state of paralysis by analysis, and we loop relentlessly trying to find out how to get out of pain, how to make more money, how to pay our bills, how to take care of our kids. And our entire life is looping in a situation we can't get out of. And so when we're there and we're in those loops, our bodies kick off cortisol. And what happens with cortisol is what happened to me. Because most of my life was in a state of survival, anger, frustration, scarcity, and fear, I lived in high levels of cortisol. And that is how I got MS. I have no doubt about it. When our bodies are staying in high levels of cortisol for extended periods of time, we've seen an absolute Richter rise of autoimmune disease. They are very much related to cortisol imbalance. Men get fat around the middle. We women are lucky. We just get fat everywhere when we're in a cortisol flood. Men just get that tire around the middle. We get it everywhere. But here's where it got interesting. When I learned what cortisol did to my body, I started to ask better questions. And one of the questions was, how does it keep me where I'm at? Well, when I'm in a state of cortisol, and why so many people are frustrated, why so many kids don't know what to do with this, is because we lose access to the right side of our brain. And believe it or not, ladies, the right side is our feminine. The left is the logical side is the masculine. Well, when I lose my ability to find solutions because I've lost access to the creative troubleshooting side of my brain because cortisol shut it off, it's the fight or flight hormone. It's in our body for one reason, to fight or flee. But because we've become such achievers and we're in these cortisol floods, it stays in our bodies for extended periods of time and it does damage. But the biggest damage in this conversation is we lose access to the emotions and the solutions we need to fix the problem, to change the situation. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse. And how to fix it is magic. Rather than asking how, this is the power, people. Instead of asking, how am I going to make more money? How am I going to fix this situation? How am I going to change my life? We need to ask a better question. What these successful people did to flip the ratio is they stopped asking how. They started asking who. Who do I need to be to change this problem? Who do I need to be to help my kids? Who have I been in the past when I kicked ass, organizing and getting things cleaned up and taking action, inspired action? Who was I when I kicked the winning field goal in school? Who, if you don't know any who's, if you don't have any positive references of any wins in your life, and I have coached a lot of people like that, you can use other people's story. Who can I model after? I'll do a lot of work with helping clients identify someone they can model after, embrace the behavior, embrace the beliefs that that person has, and change their life. So the who question drops us out of being a victim in our head to the mechanics of the problem, the logical side that we can't fix. And to get better results, we have to get out of our head and we have to drop into our heart. When I'm faced with anger or I'm faced with a situation that I can't get out of, it is imperative that I find a new way to get solution. And the fastest way to do that is to get out of my head and drop into my heart, which is where passion lives. Passion is not an intellectual exercise. If I want to get passionate about building a business, raising a family, changing my life, it is not a logical question, believe it or not. When I drop into my heart, I access a superpower that is multiple times greater than my brain. And when I do that, I open up the right side of my brain, and now I have access to every superpower at my disposal, because my body now goes, oh, we're not looking for how, we're looking for who. And we know how to do that. If you can go to the next slide for me, please. Burnout is not a personal failure. It's a cultural and identity crisis, and we need to change it, not just for us, but for the generations coming behind us. Because right now, they don't know how to fix their emotional condition. All they know what to do, and we're witness to it, is take drugs, overdose, fight people, burn things down, and commit suicide. And that's largely because no one taught us how to regulate our emotional states. They taught us how to go to school, but they didn't tell us how to deal with our emotions when someone cuts us off, or someone betrays us, or someone violates us. And so we're left with no solution, true solution. So how do we do this? How do we build a life by our design? Well, one, we need to ask better questions. Asking how isn't going to fix it. Asking who gets us access to better results. So ask, who have I been in the past when I did something great? Who do I know I can model after? Who do I long to be every day? One of the worst parts of my life is I hated being angry. I had been called a Nazi, a bitch, militant, a control freak, all out of my need to survive. And I hated it. I hated the labels, because at my core, I'm lover. I'm a lover, and I'm light, and I'm a goddess of healing. But I could never get to it because the rage, I couldn't find a way to manage it. And it kept me safe. Those bad emotions, if I was more intimidating, I could stay safe. And so I had to access a new version of me, and I had to redefine what she looked like. And it wasn't through the process of how, but who did I want to become? And if I didn't know how to get there, I could model it after somebody who was ahead of me on the path. I could get a coach that could help me figure it out. I could change my life. And when I recognized it was all by my design and my control, everything changed. I got to create the values I wanted to live within, my values, not the ones I was told they should be mine, not the ones society gave me, but my values that made me love my life. And I redefined them for me. I learned to set boundaries because of who I was. I no longer deserved to be treated badly and betrayed, taken advantage of. So I started asking better questions about my boundaries. What am I tolerating? What am I allowing every day? What behaviors make me feel terrible that I gloss over and soften because I don't want to deal with the hard thing on the other side of that? And I started asking, what's one thing I can do today to access my power and live a life I love? And then I created rituals that supported those beliefs. And I started asking every day, how can I love myself more today? How can I create more safety and enjoyment in my day to day? How can I access the parts of me that need to come forward? Now, if you'll notice, 3/4 of this are not how questions. Only the last quarter go to the how. I start with who and what, always out of the gate. If you guys want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. So as we're working through our life, the challenge on the table for all of us is, one, to recognize our emotions are not out of our control or out of our choice. Life is a choice. And when I learned I could choose the emotions I wanted and needed to be happy, when I could choose who I needed to become to experience those, and I could challenge the old narrative, it was a very fascinating conversation. And I will be honest, I have not been in a state of rage for years. I choose my life every day. I've brought in and woven in processes to help me become who I want to be at a next level each moment of my day. And as a result, my life is beautiful. As a result, the entire history of my life that used to be a nightmare story is now a beautiful tapestry and a beautiful way for me to help other people coming behind me in creating a life they love. And so my coaching comes out of my pain. And I believe that my darkness is walking out of my darkness, and the light you see is based on the proportion of darkness I walked out of. My life is nothing but light, but it came out of the fire. And the fire wasn't easy, but I had to choose to walk out of it. And I needed to choose who I wanted to be as a result of it. And now life is beautiful. So I've had the pleasure of working with very many people. And I started a women's program to create a community for high achieving women to come and be safe, to come and heal, to come and choose who they want to become with other women on the journey. So I have a group called the Divine Femme Collective, and I'm going to make it available to you. If you would like to see what it's all about, I'm going to include a QR code here for you, because I want to invite you to a space that you may not know you have access to. I want you to be able to come in with people that are like you, so you don't feel like you're being made wrong or judged. There's no shame in healing. There is shame in staying in pain. Pain is optional. Pain is life. Tony talks about it. If we look at a heart monitor, it's a blip, goes up and down. And when it flatlines, we're dead. Same thing is true with life. Pain is optional. Suffering is a choice. And so my whole life path is to help people out of the suffering of their mindset, of their pain, and help them create a life that they desire. And so when we abandon our true identity to belong to the world, to fit in, to try and make things work, the way we heal is when we come back to who we truly are. And that's your voice, not anybody else's. And it takes some time to sit in the quiet to figure out which voice is mine, or to figure out which one I want. And I'm here to help guide you through that. And so I want to thank you today. My email will be on there. If you have any questions, if you want further information on how to access this, I gave you a 3-hour conversation in a very short amount of time, but I hope it adds value, because if you can teach your children who they want to be and who they really are, and you can empower them to access that, then there will be no bullies that can take them out. There will be no drug worthy of their pain. And they will be able to choose a life like you, one of life, of hope, of joy, and by their choice. We need to bring choice back, and not choice on just which career path, but which life path, and who they are at their core, and what value do they get to add to the planet so they feel a deeper purpose. And so if you'll go to the next slide, we can put that up. I'll let them roll that. There you go. I also work with men. I do a lot of deep work with men in sexual trauma. I work with a lot of women and children in the space of creating a life that they desire. And so if you would like more information on that, I would like to offer it to you. And I hope that any of you out there that are in suffering would put your hand up, because I would love to see you heal. And I'd love to see you have a life that you love every day. And it doesn't mean you can't be a success. In fact, it's the truest definition of success. You can be great at the science of achievement, but if you do not have the art of fulfillment within it, life is a miserable place to be. So on that note, I want to thank all of you and thank the organization for having me. And I just hope that today is a beautiful day and that you can choose who you get to be at the end of it. So thank you. Peace.
Yes, Melissa, your journey is really inspiring and you are inspiration to many women. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Did it
Yeah.
make sense, honey?
Yeah. We have a few questions from our audience, Melissa. I
Great.
want to
Can I
ask you.
answer those? Perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. How does you empower individuals to claim the life they truly deserve and desire?
How do I help them find that?
Yeah. How does you empower individuals to claim the life they truly deserve and desire?
Oh, I love that question. I help them identify why they want it. Then I walk them through a process on how they can create it. And I help them move the limiting beliefs and old stories out of the way. Because most of us are, if we change our story, we change our life. And I had a very ugly story of my life. I blamed my parents. There was a lot of blame. But with my clients, when I help them identify what it is they want, if they don't know, then we do a process to find it, because not everybody knows what they want. If you're in survival, it's hard to think beyond that. So I help them dream into the future, and I help them see a path and empower them. What tools do they need to get there? But most importantly, who do they need to become to create it?
Yeah, what you said is really correct. And thank you so much for your valuable time, Melissa.
You're welcome, honey. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we are honored. And be on the backstage and please join our next session, Melissa.
I will, honey. I thank you.
Yeah,
Be
thank you.
blessed.
Yeah.
Mwah.